Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are staring down the barrel of a massive topic, and I don't use that word lightly.
Yeah.
We're looking at a stack of sources, structural analysis decks, economic reports, all claiming we are living through the single biggest operating system update in the history of Western civilization.
It is a huge, huge claim. And it's one that usually triggers a knee-jerk reaction.
Right.
When people hear the title of the main source, The Great Feminization, they immediately think it's, a political debate.
About quotas or gender wars or
Like
something.
it's having more women in the office.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But the sources we're unpacking today, they're arguing something much, much deeper. They're saying this isn't just about demographics.
No, it's not about who sits in the boardroom. It's about the fundamental logic that runs society.
The underlying code.
The code itself is being rewritten from what they call a masculine operating system to a feminine one. And before we get into the weeds, we have to look at that first slide.
Yeah, let's pull up slide 1. The Great Feminization. A structural analysis. Because honestly, this visual it stopped me in my tracks.
The melting pillar.
It's this classical, sturdy stone pillar, the kind you'd see on a courthouse. It looks solid, immovable, ancient.
The West.
Totally.
Ole.
But then you look at the base, and it's not crumbling. It's not cracking. It is literally dissolving into a fluid puddle.
And that image, that is the anchor for everything we are going to talk about today. The sources use that pillar to represent the masculine structural basis of the West.
Yeah.
And the puddle.
That's structural dissolution towards fluidity.
Exactly.
So I guess our mission today is to figure out, is the building falling down?
Yeah.
Or is it just changing state? Because melting isn't usually a good thing for architecture.
That is the core tension. So let's start with definitions. Because when the sources say masculine operating system, they're not talking about, football and pickup trucks.
Right. Let's just clear that up immediately.
In this context, masculine refers to a system built on specific values: individualism, competition, hierarchy, and what the text calls the unfettered pursuit of truth.
Unfettered being the key word there.
Right. Think of it like a grid or a stone wall. It's rigid. It's efficient. It prioritizes objective facts over subjective feelings.
So if 2 + 2 = 4 makes you sad, the masculine system says.
Too bad it's still 4. It's the logic of the engineer, the warrior.
Okay, so that's the pillar. Now what's the solvent? What is the feminine operating system that's turning this stone into water?
The feminine system, it prioritizes social cohesion, empathy, safety, emotional validation. The goal isn't necessarily objective truth at all costs.
The goal is group harmony.
Group harmony, relationship maintenance.
So if the masculine system is a jagged rock, the feminine system is water. It fills the gaps. It smooths the edges.
And the central thesis of this stack, and you can see it in the mind map of affected domains, is that Western institutions, from corporations to law, are rapidly shifting from the rock to the water.
Now, one of the most fascinating concepts here was this idea of the tipping point. Because I think most people assume this change happens, linearly.
Right. You get 10% more women, the culture changes 10%.
Yeah.
But the data suggests that's not how it works. One of the articles argues that cultural change is non-linear. It's a phase change, like water to ice.
A flip.
A total flip. The claim is that once an institution hits a critical mass of, say, roughly 50% female representation, the culture doesn't just balance out, it flips.
It flips completely.
Yes. The argument is that once you hit that threshold, the remaining men often stop behaving in that traditional masculine way. They realize that to survive, you can't use the old tools.
What, like open aggression or blunt debate?
Or hierarchical command, yeah. You can't be the hard-driving boss anymore.
Not if you want to keep your job.
So they adopt a female worldview. They start navigating via consensus, reputation management, emotional intelligence.
That's fascinating. So the stone doesn't just get outnumbered by the water. The stone starts trying to act like water just to stay afloat.
Precisely. It's an adaptive strategy. And we see this playing out most visibly in the first domain on our mind map, the corporate sphere.
Oh, man. This section, for anyone working a 9-to-5, this is going to hit close to home. There's this one quote that made me laugh, but it's also kind of biting. It compared modern office culture to a Montessori kindergarten.
It's a provocative image, for sure, but it points to what the sources call atrophication.
Atrophication. It sounds like a disease. Walk us through it.
Well, the idea is that the Human Resources Department has evolved. It's not just payroll anymore. It's a cultural enforcement agency. The HR veto effectively suppresses traditional masculine traits.
Traits like what?
High risk-taking, blunt feedback, aggression, even just eccentricity. In the old great man model, if a genius CEO was a jerk, you put up with it. The results justified it. Now, in the Montessori model, agreeableness is the primary currency. You have to play nice. If you're toxic, which is a very, fluid term, you're out, no matter how talented you are.
But the sources are pretty cynical about why we're playing nice. They don't think corporations suddenly grew a heart.
Oh, no. A lot of analysts argue this is totally artificial. It's driven by the legal department. It's about liability. Companies are just terrified of lawsuits.
Discrimination suits, harassment, hostile work environment.
All of it. So they engineer a culture of extreme safety and politeness just to minimize risk.
So we're designing nice workplaces not because we care, but because we don't want to get sued. Monetizing manners.
That's the cynical take. But you have to give credit to the data here. If we stop there, we are missing a massive piece of the puzzle. Because if this Montessori culture was so bad for business,
Companies would be going broke.
and they aren't. Not even close. In fact, the financial reports in our stack tell a completely different story. We have data showing companies with high female representation on executive committees. They're thriving.
Okay, hit me with the numbers.
We're talking about a 66% increase in return on invested capital. ROIC.
Wait, 66%? That seems incredibly high. Is that correlation or?
It's a fair question, and statisticians will always debate it. But the spread is consistent. Return on equity is 42% higher. The argument there is that the old masculine style, the authoritarian do-what-I-say approach, is just inefficient in a complex modern economy.
Because the world is too complicated for one guy to have all the answers.
Exactly. We've moved to what the sources call transformative leadership, which is more democratic, more relationship building. It gathers more input, builds more consensus.
And catches more errors. Finds more opportunities.
Theoretically. And you saw that study on Indian businesses, too.
Yes, that was fascinating.
Yeah.
Because India is, traditionally seen as a very patriarchal corporate culture.
Right. But the study found that the female executives who do break through tend to dramatically outperform men in open communication and employee empowerment.
So the melting pillar might be messy structurally, but it seems to be profitable. The water is adapting to the container better than the stone did.
In business, yes, fluidity allows for adaptability, but, and this is the tension, business benefits from fluidity. But what about the law?
This is segment 3 on the mind map. And honestly, this is where the thesis gets a lot darker.
It does. This is where we talk about the empathy trap.
Okay, so help me understand this. We usually think of empathy as a universal good. Who doesn't want an empathetic judge?
Well, the rule of law traditionally is supposed to be blind. That's the whole point of the statute with the blindfold. It applies the rules regardless of who you are or how sad your story is. That's masculine objectivity.
Right. If I steal bread to feed my starving family, the masculine law says, you stole. Guilty. It's cold.
It's cold, but it's consistent. But the sources argue that as the legal profession feminizes, and law schools are now majority female, we're seeing a shift toward rule-bending compassion.
Which means the judge looks at the starving family and says, I understand why you did it, so I'm going to let it slide.
And on a human level, that feels right. We want to help people, but structurally. The analysts warn it's a disaster, because if you bend the rule to soothe suffering, you erode the rule. You introduce institutional inconsistency.
Because now the outcome depends on the judge's feelings, not the written statute.
Exactly. The rule of law dissolves into the rule of feelings. It goes from stone to puddle. And the danger is that a puddle can't protect you.
That connects to the section on diplomacy, too.
Yeah.
The shift from hard power to soft power.
Yes. Historically, diplomacy was a poker game with guns, threats, military leverage. Very masculine. The modern shift is toward diplomacy as a feminine art. Nuance, indirection, relationship management.
Which, again, avoiding war seems good. But I suspect there's a but coming.
The but is risk aversion.
Yeah.
The psychological literature in our stack describes feminine psychology as statistically more risk averse.
Oh.
When you upload that psychology to the government, you get an exponential increase in safety mandates.
The nanny state.
Essentially, the criticism here is that this obsession with safety kills ambition. It views innovators who are usually high-risk takers, as dangerous troublemakers. So you get a safer society, but a stagnant one.
Right. You stop going to the moon because it's not safe.
Exactly.
So if you're a listener, you're probably thinking, okay, a system designed around feminine values must be a paradise for women.
You would think so.
But then we hit segment 4, the paradox of status. And this was the biggest surprise for me, the feminization of poverty.
It is a cruel irony. The sources call it feminomics.
So let's look at the history they gave. The teaching profession.
This is the blueprint for what they claim is happening elsewhere. Back in the mid-19th century, teaching was a male profession. Strict, disciplined, decent social standing.
Right.
As it transitioned to a female-dominated field by 1900, two things happened at the same time.
First, the job description changed.
Right. It became viewed as nurturing rather than educating. And second,
The pay and the social status just plummeted.
it lost its hard power. It lost its prestige. The warning in these sources is that this might be a universal law. As fields like law and medicine feminize, they might follow that same trajectory.
So women enter a high-status field, and the field itself gets downgraded.
The data suggests that happens. And then you look at the poverty stats. It's rough. In 2015, the U.S. poverty rate was 15% for women versus 10% for men.
But why? If the system is feminine, why are women struggling?
The sources point to two concepts: capability deprivation and time poverty.
Time poverty is such a great term.
It's the idea that women are still doing the bulk of unpaid care work, children, elderly parents, household stuff. That just eats up the time and energy you need to build wealth or political capital.
So even if the operating system is feminine, the actual women are just exhausted.
And this leads to that structural shift in dependency we saw in the notes.
Where it shifts to the state.
Right. In the old system, the provider was the father or husband. As that role is displaced, dependency doesn't vanish. It shifts to the state. The state becomes the husband. The state becomes the provider.
Which reinforces that big, safe regulatory apparatus we talked about earlier.
It's a self-reinforcing loop.
Okay, I want to pivot to the final layer here. We've done business, law, economics. Let's talk about the soul. Segment 5, culture, religion, and social control.
This is fascinating territory.
The analysis of Western Christianity really stood out. I grew up with the idea of, onward Christian soldiers marching as to war.
That's the spiritual warfare model. It's a masculine framework. Fighting sin, battling evil, it's active.
But the sources argue that's gone.
It's being replaced by what they call bridal mysticism.
Which is?
A shift toward emotional intimacy with the divine. It emphasizes passive receptivity, being filled by the Spirit, feeling loved. It's not a battle, it's a relationship.
And the demographics reflect that. The Barna survey data was pretty stark.
Typical worship attendance is 61% female, and the notes mention men are scarce, especially what they call highly masculine men. They look at this bridal mysticism model, and they don't see themselves. There's no battle for them to fight there.
Now, this connects to something that feels very current. You can't talk about modern culture without talking about wokeness and cancel culture. But the source takes a very different angle on this.
It doesn't call it Marxism. It doesn't call it politics.
What does it call it?
Feminized social conflict.
Okay, explain that.
Okay, think about how boys and girls traditionally handle conflict on a playground. This is broad sociology, obviously, but masculine conflict is often described as direct. You have a disagreement, maybe you shove each other, you slug it out, then it's over.
And feminine conflict?
It's relational. It's about exclusion. You can't sit with us. It attacks the reputation, the social standing. It relies on ostracism to protect the group harmony.
So the argument is that cancel culture is just that playground dynamic, but weaponized at an institutional level.
Exactly. It prioritizes group cohesion over free speech. If someone says something unsafe that threatens the harmony, the feminine operating system says they must be cast out to restore safety.
So it's not an ideological revolution. It's a change in management style.
It's a safety mechanism. Safety over truth. There it is again.
Wow. And it's almost like we're automating this behavior, too. The section on AI was a little creepy.
The chat bots.
Yeah. The sources point out that almost all customer service AI, even ChatGPT, are designed with feminine personas.
They're helpful, submissive, accommodating. How can I help you today? I apologize if I made a mistake.
You don't have an AI that challenges you.
No. Imagine a masculine AI. You ask it a stupid question and it says, that's a dumb question, try again, here are the facts. We don't build that.
Okay. We have covered a massive amount of ground here. We've watched the stone pillar melt into a puddle. We've seen the corporate world get Montessori'd but get richer. We've seen the rule of law bend toward empathy.
It is a total system overhaul.
So let's try to bring this all together for you, the listener. What is this invisible engine actually doing to us?
It's a trade-off. I think that's the most honest way to look at it. We are trading the stability of objective structures, that cold, hard stone pillar, for the fluidity of empathetic cohesion.
The stone is strong, but it's brittle. It breaks.
And it doesn't care about you. It's cold.
The puddle's inclusive, it's adaptable, it's safe.
But it can't hold up a roof.
And that is the terrifying question the sources leave us with. Is this great feminization a sign of a more evolved, civilized society? Are we finally moving past the brutality of the past?
Or is it a structural decline? If you look at history, civilizations often become softer, more concerned with safety right before they collapse.
Because if a crisis hits, a real hard physical crisis, a war, a famine, can the puddle hold?
Can you build a skyscraper out of empathy?
That's the question. We are designing a society that feels much safer, much kinder, but is it structurally unsound?
If the melting pillar analysis is true, we might be making ourselves feel better while compromising the very structures that keep the lights on.
A comforting thought to leave you with today.
Hey, we promised a deep dive, not a comforting swim.
Fair enough. Chew on that. Ideally, talk about it with someone who completely disagrees with you, if you can find a way to do it without getting canceled.
Good luck with that.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next one.